I'm 27 weeks now, which means I'm in the 3rd trimester, so that's pretty exciting. I went to my first appointment this week with the new OB they switched to, that's in the same office. His name is Dr. Andrews, and he is amazing. I love him. He is fantastic. He's exactly what I was looking for. He's exactly what I want. He's exactly what I need. So he walked in, and just right off the bat, he was just very personable and cracking jokes, and he's just like, "How are you doing today?" And I was like, "I'm doing good." And he's like, "Do you want me to change that?" And I was like, "No, please don't." And he just like made this like fake face, and he was like, "So you're in the 3rd trimester, yay!" I was like, "Yes." So he is completely and totally on board with the feedback. He's super supportive of it. He was explaining while he was measuring me that women who enter trial of labor are 75% of the time they're successful with the VBAC, which is true. That is the ACOG current statistic. He said that there's the risk of uterine rupture, but it's very, very rare, which is also true. He said he's never seen one, ever, which is very comforting. So it must mean that he's obviously not super intervention happy, which, doing things that increase that risk. He was telling me about some other kind of pain relief besides the epidural. I can't remember what it was called. We talked about that briefly. He did a short little ultrasound, and sure enough, she is head down. I suspected a couple days before my appointment that she had flipped back to head down because I started feeling kick movements up around my belly button. And when I pulled out the Doppler, I found her heartbeat very, very low. Not far above my C-section scar, like maybe, about this far above it. I was pretty sure she was head down, but he did a quick ultrasound. He said he always does it around the beginning of the 3rd trimester as kind of a treat, since moms have to go through the glucose test, and she is definitely head down. And he printed out a picture of her face. You can kind of tell it's looking head on at her face. This is her face here. Her eyes, her nose, her mouth, and her chin. And that's one of her hands. That's her other arm. That's her abdomen. So he looked in between her legs, and he's like, "I hope you're planning to have a girl." This is definitely a girl. And yeah, there were 3 lines for sure. And this time her legs were actually wide open, so it was no question. He also said with the placenta being posterior, it's definitely not going to become an issue with my C-section scar, and shouldn't become an issue with my cervix with previous. Glad that's just one less thing I have to worry about. He said he doesn't like to induce feedbacks, just like Dr. LaRose said. The difference though, it increases the risk of uterine rupture, but he also made it sound more like it's not completely off the table, where if it was something that would be induced for that, it would automatically become a repeat C-section. He did mention something about if contractions were very, very wimpy and needed a little bit of Pitocin to make them a little bit stronger so that they were more productive, that he would do that. So it's not completely off the table, but he likes to avoid it unless it's really necessary, and even try other things first, which is exactly what ACOG says. When I asked him about going overdue, he says he has no problem going overdue. He said you're not overdue until you're 42 weeks. And he said, and even then, it just is a matter of doing additional post-dates testing and just waiting to see how baby's doing. He said, sometimes as you go further along, the placenta starts to have calcification and starts breaking down, so it's not doing as good of a job, and the farther you go, the more baby needs more. And so sometimes, he said, it gets to this point where baby is not happy anymore. But he said they do the testing to see how baby's doing, and he said either if baby's not doing good anymore, or you go into labor, whichever comes first. But he doesn't have a set date that you got to 41 weeks or 42 weeks, all right, done. Like, he's willing to go. He said he had a patient once who went to 43 weeks. Like, he has no problem with that. So that is such a relief. I'm so glad. Another one less thing to worry about. It doesn't mean that I have no chance of being induced, but I definitely have a much less chance of being induced, and I know that going into labor spontaneously is not only safer for us and even less of a chance of a uterine rupture, but it is also more likely that we will be successful with the VBAC, and it's just better overall to let it be a natural process rather than a synthetic one. We talked about the previous birth, and I told him about how I was induced because of high blood pressure, but it wasn't quite that high. I told him about how kind of the beginning of the end of how it kind of culminated into a C-section. I definitely still want to make a video about Kaladin's birth story, but long story short, Kaladin went into a kind of unusual position late in the game. At 8 centimeters, he put his arm above his head, all the way like this. So I told him that they refused to deliver him that way, and he made a face. And I'm like, hey, Dr. LaRose made a face too. So he's like, that's really stupid. He's like, and that's just called compound presentation, and that's just another variance of normal. He obviously does not have the philosophy, so had that happened with him, he would have just continued, and he would have delivered him that way if he stayed in that position. So he's like, the risks that they were talking about are just, no, it's like, they basically really overreacted about that, and they should have just let it go and not cornered me into, you know, C-section or push him back now. So again, I told him how they were gonna push him back, and he thought that was really stupid, really stupid. It's like, why did they do that? That doesn't really help. A lot of times it doesn't even work, and then it like invites more risk, which is exactly what happened. Sure enough, Kaladin went into distress, and I'm sure it was a cord issue, and when it's a cord issue, usually there's nothing they can do at that point. You have to get baby out. So the cesarean was necessary. The other crap that caused the cesarean was not necessary. So who knows, things could have been very, very different. You know, had it been at a different hospital, different provider, who knows. But it just made me very angry that we went through all that and it was for nothing. It was very traumatic. So I told him about how they broke my water because I was still at 3 centimeters after 7 hours, and he's like, first time mom, especially in induction, especially before you're even to 40 weeks, it's totally, completely normal for it to take 20 hours just to get to 4 centimeters. So again, he's just very hands-off. He has exactly the philosophy that I want. He's just very hands-off and just, you know, goes along with normal birth and only does interventions when it's needed and necessary, instead of just because it's convenient or typical or routine or whatever. So he's just perfect. And he also talked about, I asked him about breech. He's not worried about it at all until 36 or 37 weeks, but he said if it gets to that point that he's completely willing to do an external version to try to turn her. He's done enough that he can kind of get a feel for how difficult it will be to turn her. So he said he doesn't require an epidural to do it, but he said if he can tell that it's going to take a lot of effort and hurt really bad, that a lot of times he will suggest it. But it's, again, not required. It's up to her. He said sometimes it's super easy and he barely does anything and they flip. So overall, he's just very warm. He's very caring. He's got a great bedside manner. Very personable, funny, just laid back, like just the perfect kind of provider that I need. So I'm looking forward to working with him more and having him hopefully be the one to catch Squish when the time comes. So hopefully he's on call or available when that time comes. He also said that since I'm in the 3rd trimester now, that from now on the appointments will be every other week. So my next one is on the 24th, which is a Monday also. For that one, I have to stop by the lab real quick beforehand, drink the glucose, then go in to have my appointment, and then go back to the lab to have them draw the blood. They're like a block away, if that, not even, it's like half a block away. So it's really convenient, and then I'll be a little bit more efficient with time, so I'm not just sitting there in the lab for an hour trying to entertain Cal. So anyway, it was just a fantastic appointment. I could not be happier. I really feel like I made the best decision for me and Squish. I wish I would have done it sooner, and I'm just really glad I just bit the bullet and did it. Like, I could not imagine a better person to be taking care of us. I think we'll be well taken care of. So that's pretty much all I have to talk about this week. That's it for today. Bye!